We are live backstage at the City Winery with my jokester friend here. It is Kevin from Candlebox.
Yo.
We are not only celebrating 25 years of the first record debut, we're celebrating your birthday tonight. 29 years old.
49 years old. Stop saying that shit. I'm 49.
We're gonna keep it real from this point on.
The grace.
Does it, in all seriousness, does it seem weirder to say that you're 49 or that first record is 25 years old?
It's weirder that it's 25 years old. Yeah, that's the weirder thing. Because I mean, honestly, I've said it a million times. If you'd have told me 25 years ago that this record would still be as important as it is to a lot of people, I would have said you're crazy. I wouldn't have had any type of cognizant realization that was going to be real. You hope and dream when you start a band that you have that career, and I do. It's bizarre.
We're going to be talking about the first album in its entirety, but Candlebox started in 1991. The album came out in 1993. So were there any songs that you wrote that didn't make that first album that you wish were on it?
No. Not that I wished were on it. There are several songs that are on the red tape that released, the demo tape, that people talk about, that I like, but, which Can't Give In was in the, Airheads soundtrack.
Yep.
But no, I'm pretty happy with how that record is. I wouldn't have done anything differently. When we had other songs, but they just weren't good. They weren't where we wanted to be when we made the album.
What's the oldest song on the album?
That would be Cover Me.
Okay.
That was written in 91. That's like the first day Pete came to jam with us. We wrote Cover Me. And then like the following week we wrote Change. And then we wrote Can't Give In and other songs that were on the red tape. And then Barty joined in the fall of 91, and he brought You and Far Behind It. And that's kind of when we realized what our sound was going to be. Barty really kind of solidified the Candlebox sound, his bass playing and his songwriting. He and I wrote several songs together. And then, of course, we did He Calls Home on Super Bowl Sunday of 92. It all kind of came together when it was supposed to, I think.
Did Candlebox have a drastically different sound before? Were you looking to be more of a punk band or anything like that?
No, it's always kind of been what it is. Scott's playing was always, as meticulous and structured as it is to this day. He always played that way. Pete's playing never veered, never strayed. I didn't really know how to sing back then, so my voice has changed over the years. From
you were a drummer at first.
I was a drummer, yeah. So that's where you kind of get the rhythmic sense of my singing on the albums, where everything's kind of got a timing thing to it. But yeah, I'm the reluctant lead singer of Candlebox, always have been.
We're hanging out with Kevin from Candlebox on 94.3 The Shark, Everything That Rocks. Right before we dive into the first album, as a DJ, I remember where I was the first time I got to play Far Behind, which is my favorite song of all time. Do you remember where you were the first time you heard it on the radio?
God, no, because we didn't release it as a single until 94. No, I remember the first time Change came on, but not Far Behind. Okay. I think there were probably stations that played it, but I didn't hear it on the air until that spring of 94 when we were out with Rush. And it's probably because we were just touring so much. And Change and You were doing really well at radio. So, but no, I don't recall where I was when I first heard it. I'm usually an elephant with that sort of stuff. But it's funny, when we wrote it, my buddy Kent was like, dude, you have literally just written a song that's going to be your career. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, that's the song. Like, that's the Don't Stop Believin', that's the Alive, if you will. And I thought he was crazy. I was like, dude, it's a ballad. Like, nobody listens to ballads. He's like, you kidding me?
You still look surprised when that audience sings it back to you every single night.
I am.
And we'll talk a little bit about a special version of Far Behind that went on a live album. And yes, I am cheating because even though we've been friends for about 7 years now, I get nervous when I have to do this sort of thing. So the first song on the album is Don't You.
Uh-huh.
What were your earliest memories of writing that song?
That was, oddly enough, to be perfectly honest with you, that was kind of a bit of I was a little bit perturbed with Pete's kind of control issues with the band early on, and like we had a bass player named Perry who was fantastic when we first started, and it was his birthday, and we're walking down First Avenue. We walk past the Vogue. We're going to the Frontier Room, and Pete goes, "Hey man, Perry, listen, it's just not working out with you." And Pete had been with the band like 2 weeks, and he fired the bass player on his birthday, on Perry's birthday, on the way to a bar that we were going to drink at.
Without telling you?
Without telling me, and Scott and I started the band, so I was kind of like, and then other issues, so. It was kind of a little bit of a, I was just basically saying, hey, man, you can't just do what you want to do. I used a lot of what was going on in my life at the same time to influence the lyrics and to inspire the lyrics, but it really was, there was the crux of it was because Pete had this control thing with the band, and I was just like, hey, we're a band. We're not one person.
Right.
We don't make singular decisions. So that's really what that song was about. Was I didn't like people taking control of my life. I'm in control of my life, and so that's what that song was about.
Second song on the album, and I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but it's Change, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we've heard the stories about it, but it was a sort of street pharmaceutical induced.
No, fully growing from the ground induced song.
Gotcha.
God given. Hallucinogens. Yeah, I wrote that song on mushrooms, and Pete had brought the song to the studio.
It's bad, kids. It's bad.
No,
it's
mushrooms
bad.
are great. Wired. What is he saying? Role models. Why do kids do drugs? Because they're awesome. But I told him. I said I'm going to go out tonight and take mushrooms. I'm going to write lyrics for that song, and that's what I did. And I think it's the last time I did mushrooms as well, because it was a pretty crazy trip. I woke up in the next day looking at the lyrics that I'd written. I was like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. But the line, "It's all been written down," was in there, and it was in there several times. And I was like, I need to surround the song about that. And what it means is, when I did realize what I was trying to say through the jumbled mess of lyrics, is that we're mortals, and life is very, very short, and it's fleeting. And if you don't grab it and run with it and enjoy it every single day of your life and live it to its fullest, you're wasting your time here.
That's why I'm here on 2 hours sleep.
There you go.
I'm not missing a Candlebox concert for anything. Track 3 on the album is You.
Yeah. You want to know about that?
Oh, a little bit.
Well, I wrote that in response to my young drug-taking childhood. I did a lot of drugs from the age of 12 till 18, and I think it was because I was trying to escape the world that I was surrounded with, which my parents had moved me several times.
Chicago, Texas.
Yeah, all over the place. And then we ended up in Seattle in '84 when I was 14 years old, in the middle of my sophomore year, and I was pissed. I was not happy about that direction. It wasn't what I was looking for. I was looking for something solid in my life, some foundation. So the drugs allowed me to escape the anxiety I had as a young kid, and so I stopped doing drugs on my 18th birthday, and years later I was able to kind of channel that feeling into that song.
Did you feel that once you stopped, or at least turned 18, you finally started to get comfortable with Seattle?
I don't know if I got comfortable at the age of 18. I don't think I ever got comfortable in Seattle. We weren't. I wasn't cut from that cloth. I wasn't an outdoorsy, kayaking and hiking and snowboarding and skiing and camping and fishing sort of person, which is what Washington State's all about. It's very outdoors. I was a punk rock kid from Texas that liked to skateboard, and it rained every single day of my life. So I think for me, and even to this day when I go back there, I still don't feel comfortable. It's a strange city, and of course, being a band, we were kind of the redheaded stepchild of Seattle, if you will, as a band. So I've always kind of carried a bit of a bitter attitude towards that city,
Simply because you were younger than the rest of the bands.
Yeah, and we couldn't play the bars. It was like we did what we did when we could.
Yeah, no sense. Track 4 is No Sense, which to me is one of the most unique songs on the album.
Very.
That and Rain, but we'll start with No Sense.
No Sense was written kind of just as a jam, and I wrote the lyrics in the studio. I sang the track outside of the studio in the street, underneath the stars, and it was a really special experience. And that's why the lyrics where I say, I'm talking about the guy walking by, that literally was happening. So I kind of made up the lyrics as the song was playing in my headphones because I didn't really have a foundation.
Okay.
I had the chorus figured out, but I didn't have the rest of the song, and that's why I call it No Sense, was because it really makes no sense. The song has no real concept to it. It just has a chorus, that's the genius of Kevin Martin.
So,
if you will.
Speaking of genius.
And by the way, if you have some sort of sense about that song, let me know what it is.
Tell me about Far Behind. Tell me about that song.
About Andy Wood, man. Your boy, my boy. Inspiration, fantastic, brilliant human being that went away far too early. Yeah, left this planet far too early.
So when I got married, you had taught me when we were talking about the wedding, let the wife have all of the demands. It's not about you, it's about her. But my one request was that Far Behind would be played at the wedding. Not the wedding song, and I know it's not a romantic song, but because it meant so much to me, and this was my wedding day, and that's the most important day. I needed the most important song. And by the way, the wedding band was phenomenal.
They were great.
They sounded so good. Just like them. Yeah. And do you ever get surprised with what that song means to other people?
Not surprised. I'm interested. I didn't tell anyone forever what that song was about, except the guys in the band. The initial lyric was "Now Andy, I didn't mean to treat you bad." And what it is it's not me singing to him. It's the drug. That's what the lyric.
To Andy.
The drug talking to Andy, that took his life, and because it controlled him. It's all he could think about every day of his life. So that's what the song is. It's a love song or it's a breakup song and all that stuff. And so I'm interested to hear what the different opinions or feelings or emotions that the song has generated in everybody's life that I've met that's talked to me about it. And there's a million different stories, and that's what I guess a good song's supposed to do is give everybody their own story, or their own image of something.
You sing a little bit of Chloe. You started to sing a little bit of one of Andy's songs last night, and I cried. And thank God I got through talking about Far Behind without choking up. It almost broke. But do you get a sense of what he was feeling when you sing it? Like as a singer, can you feel what he was thinking about?
Oh, sure. I mean, and I think if you listen to how I sing, you can tell that I was hugely influenced by him. Andy had a pattern, and he had a flow to his lyrics that I think is really singular to him. I haven't ever heard or met another singer that has that kind of passion to how they sing about anything he sang about. I mean, you listen to the weird little demo tapes that he made; they're full of passion.
Elijah,
it's crazy, man. Like this, all he was supposed to be was a musician, and that's what's so amazing about him in such a short career. So for me, I think I've always found some sort of comfort in music and what he inspired in me as an artist. You know what I mean? I don't really know if I'm answering the question correctly. I just, it's hard. It's kind of hard to pinpoint. You know what you're asking. It's hard to.
Remember what you said about that song, No Sense? Does
Yeah.
it make sense to you?
Yeah.
Then it makes sense to us.
Yeah.
So after this song rips your face off, track 5 on the album, comes this amazing ballad. Why was Blossom not a single?
We fought with the label over that. They wanted to go with Cover Me. I think they wanted to kind of get out of the mid-tempo thing because Far Behind is a mid-tempo track. Change and You are relatively mid-tempo. And they wanted something that was a little bit more along the lines of Far Behind in kind of the epic, grandiose sense of the song.
Like the same kind of breakdown at the end of Cover Me.
Yeah. And Blossom should have been it should have been a single because it's a true love song. That's what Blossom is.
So after Blossom, do you remember what track 7 was?
Arrow.
Yes, which you kick a lot of concerts off with. Was that written with that in mind?
No, it was it was just written as a rock song, and then of course we're like, well, this should start every set. That song, it's called Arrow because I love Aerosmith, and it's because the breakdown has that kind of Lick and a Promise breakdown.
Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of attach my my love for Aerosmith to a song. And Steven Tyler and how amazing he is. That song, again, lyrically, I find very interesting because it's just repetitive chorus and repetitive verse. Same verse the second time around. So
what I find interesting is, like, I love Aerosmith too, but the songs that the musicians gravitate to are never the songs that the non-musicians gravitate to.
No.
Lickin' a Promise was never a favorite of mine.
No. I love that song. And I mean, it's because it's got that great kind of 60s na 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 na. It's all crazy harmonies and a great guitar riff. Yeah.
The other very unique song, track 8 on the album, would be Rain.
Yep.
Which we get requests for the 90s and 9 all the time, and then I got yelled at because it's too long.
It is. What is it? 8.5 minutes? Something like that?
Almost.
Yeah.
About, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that another one of those acid trips, or?
No. We were just jamming in the studio, and that's actually about an ex-girlfriend of mine that was a stripper. That came home from a trip, and I was like, we're done. Yeah. And she actually showed up at my parents' house years later asking for royalties for that song because she knew it was about her.
It was about her.
And my mom's like, that's not how it works.
Not that stripping is not a respectable occupation. Just this particular one wasn't very nice.
Is it a respectable occupation?
We have anyway. So the track 9 would be Cover Me.
Yep. Cover Me.
Which was a single because I remember it being all over the radio in the summer of 94 and 95.
Yeah.
But to me, it's almost like the forgotten single. Like the hardcore fans that are here, they remember it.
Yeah.
But when I play Cover Me, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it should have been a bigger single?
No. I always love that song just for the the structure of it and the foundation that it was built on. Pete and I got in an argument about religion, and I immediately was drawn back into my childhood of being an altar boy and a Roman Catholic kid, and I was like, I want to write a song that is about 3 different conversations. I don't know. Again, it shouldn't have been the 4th single, and maybe that's why, because it's a very epic song. There's so much in it, and I think at the time, going with something simple would have been the icing on the cake, if you will. But I don't know. I mean, I think at that point, that record had been spinning for 2 years solid, so I think people were kind of like ready for something else at that point. Not only from us, but from other bands. The world was already changing rapidly at that point.
The whole grunge scene had come to a very quick screeching halt.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you guys were lumped into that, and you were the first to admit you were never a grunge band.
No, rock and roll band, blues-based rock band.
Do you think, looking back, if you hailed yourself from California, you wouldn't have got caught up in some of that stuff?
No, I think we still would have been thrown into just because we had long hair and we wore, flannels and, I mean, listen, Pearl Jam wasn't a grunge band. If anybody was a grunge band, it was the Melvins and Mudhoney.
Right.
But the label stuck to everybody, and it was a hard thing to try and get around as a band. It was confusing. I was like, what? I don't. We're just a rock and roll band. Why do you keep throwing us in this? But because guilty by association, I suppose.
And then track 10 is Mother's Dream, which I used to listen to on repeat. You can't really do that with Spotify anymore, but those old CD players was amazing. To me, that is like a true dream. Like that song. It's like the most psychedelic thing I think Candlebox has done.
Yeah, and again, that's why the lyric is what it is, Mother's Dream, because it felt like a wicked, aggressive dream. And that's another one that Barty brought around the first 2 weeks he was with us. It was just this bombastic bass riff. And it's about my grandmother who was living with us, my father's mom. Just was an awful human being, like really not a good person. And that's what the song's about. It's just how terrible she treated my father, who survived World War II and all this other stuff, and she's living with us and just complaining day in and day out about him.
Bruce Springsteen once said that if he got along with his father, it would have been a disaster because the public didn't like happy songs. Do you feel that like some of these tragedies that you went through did help you succeed with this band?
Oh, sure. I mean, like I said last night, I think our whole set is just sad love songs, except for like 2 or 3. But I mean, I think most artists and most musicians are tortured. I mean, that's why they become musicians or painters or writers or whatever. You've just got so much that you've gone through. Excuse me, that you have to speak about, in some way, shape, or form. And I guess with all the ins and outs of traveling and moving and all the stuff that I did with my family, it gave me something to talk about, and I'm grateful for it. But there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of pain in my life. I got a lot of it, I work through it every day.
The last song on the album, He Calls Home.
Man.
So were you worried about ending the album on such a sad note, in a slow note?
No, not at all. That was the concept.
Okay.
Let's close this out the right way, with a story. It leaves you with something, because Pete's really good with sequencing. He's sequenced almost every record we've made, and that was his direction. And he was absolutely right. I mean, the album flows like a great roller coaster ride.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why we're doing this is not only is the album 25, but I am turning 40 this year, and probably one of the only good decisions I made in my teenage years was buying that album. It was one of a few that honestly saved my life. So looking back and interviewing these different musicians that wrote these songs that not just impacted my life, but impacted my generation.
Yeah.
We were in high school. It was ours.
Yeah.
We found you guys. We took you to heart. It became our music.
Yeah.
It's not so much a question, but a statement where, well, it is a question. Do you realize the impact that you've had on an entire generation of people that to this effing day, we can curse, I fucking curse, okay, still use that album to get by, to celebrate, to cry, to think?
I love that. I mean, that's what it does for me. Am I surprised? No. Am I shocked? No. Because I think it's a great album, and I think that it impacted people because there's impact in there. It's it's a passionate album, and people can smell bullshit a mile away, and we've seen them come and go. I mean, there's a million bands that come and a million bands that leave, but we're still here 25 years later, and I'm happy that it has had the impact it's had. Like I said, if you'd have told me 25 years ago I'd still be here, I'd tell you you're nuts. Now, I'm just going to tell you it's because it's a great record.
So to wrap this up about this amazing record, Candlebox is still going strong 25 years later. There's been some lineup changes. There has been some differences in directions with albums. But at the end of the day, it's still Candlebox. And this is the second sold-out show at the City Winery in consecutive nights. And you're going to come back and you're going to sell out again. But when you did the live album, it was really to just push Disappearing in Airports.
Yeah.
But you put Far Behind on it. Do you think you'll ever get to that point like some bands where you'll stop playing that song?
No. But it wasn't our choice to put Far Behind on there.
Okay.
The label that put it out really wanted it on there because they wanted some sort of connection to who Candlebox is, because all the other stuff was relatively new. And you know, sometimes you've got to find a meeting point in the middle, and you got to agree to disagree and do what you don't want to do sometimes. Far Behind will always be a song that we play, will always be in the set. We've been known to play it the first song of the night. You know, people, just to get it over with and see who sticks around, you know. And that's kind of an asshole thing to do, but we do that. And it's funny because, you know, most of the time, you know, those 80% that really love us stick around, so.
Well, I could say that.
That's terrible, isn't it? We shouldn't do that.
Nah, well, people need a bathroom break. It's great.
Yeah,
Just like
yeah.
they sing, then they pee. But thank you. You know that over the past 7 years of getting to know you, I love you like a brother. You're like a mentor to me. You
Thank
really
you, man.
are.
Feel the same.
And all I could say is probably on behalf of most of those who listen to 94.3 The Shark, thank you for that album, and thank you for continuing.
That's
to
my
make
pleasure,
music.
brother. My pleasure. You big softy, you.
And that's a wrap on 94.3 The Shark. How'd it sound, Mike?